Hi, this is Cheryl Peterson with the Community of Christ Scientist. I loaned two books from the library, The Science of Forces by Mary Colson and The Science of Magnetism by Louise Spilsbury. The books help me better understand an article in the December 18th, 2021 edition of The Economist. The article is titled, One with Nineveh and Tyre. The article talks about, among other things, using geomagnetic archaeology to determine the strength of Earth's magnetic field. In the past, in the far past, between 400 and 800 BC, when kings ravaged and burned cities. To determine the strength of Earth's magnetic field, scientists examine and experiment with mineral remains found in the burned-down cities. Mineral remains from a fire in ancient Jerusalem have been tested based on a date considered reliable by Bible scholars, a date as written in the biblical book of Kings, describing when King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had Jerusalem ransacked and burned. Scientists today know that when the fire reached a high temperature, the minerals lost their ability to create a magnetic field. This in turn allowed Earth's magnetic field to realign the mineral's magnetism. In other words, high heat caused the magnetic mineral to lose its magnetism. Further experimentation proved that the strength of Earth's magnetic field may have been 50% stronger in and around 400 to 800 BC than it is today. Right. You'll want to double check the accuracy of my statements. I'm not an expert scientist of magnetism, and you can find lots of information online. In my search, I found that the science of magnetism began primitively in the 1500s. Over the centuries, contributors from around the world advanced the science of magnetism, which in the 20th century took off. Magnets, a big part of magnetism, are used every day in technology, in recycling centers, super-fast trains, and magnetic resonance imaging, MIR scanners. Magnets have become household items. I have magnets on the refrigerator holding up pictures drawn by our grandchildren. Science is interesting, and as a scientist of divine mind, I study metaphysics to find relationships between mental forces. Because metaphysics can be abstract, I make parallels. Magnetism is a force, an unseen force. We know the force by its effects. Divine mind is a force, an unseen force. We know the force by their effects. Physical forces are very powerful. They shape and reshape Earth. We know gravity impressively holds our bodies to the ground. Mental forces are very powerful. They can shape and reshape our brains. We know that negative thoughts limit and lock our thoughts in obsessions, sometimes destructively. The Bible talks about both types of forces. The physical type has armies joining forces, forced labor, rape. The spiritual type includes the force of spirit, divine mind, divine will. The Bible shows how over time the science of mind advanced. Characters went from having many gods to having one God. They went from worshiping God through burnt sacrifices to worshiping God in spirit and truth. Characters advanced from an eye for an eye to loving our enemies. I'll give an example of the science of mind advancing from the Bible. In the book of 1 Samuel, the prophet Samuel told King Saul that he was going to go on a trip, and the king was to wait until he returned to give a burnt offering. Samuel leaves town, and Saul stays to watch the Philistines join forces. Afraid of an attack, Saul and his people get nervous. The people scatter, and so Saul makes the decision to give the burnt offering himself. Samuel shows up and asks, "What the heck? I told you to wait for me." Okay, not those words, but Saul answers, "When I saw that the people were scattering from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines had mustered at Michmash, I said, 'Now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the favor of the Lord. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering.'" Saul used human will as a force. It was a bummer, because his kingdom was eventually given to David, a servant of the divine will. Fast forward 1,000 years to the Gospel of John, and we have Jesus. He addressed a crowd of 5,000. Afterward, he took a few loaves of bread and a few fish, gave thanks to God, and fed all the hungry people as the food multiplied. But this feast stirred the people, and Jesus could see the effects of willful hero worship at work. The people wanted to make him a king. Jesus wasn't interested in being king of a territory. He wanted the people to learn of a permanent home, a divine consciousness, infinite mind, where desires are truly satisfied. So Jesus skedaddled from the crowd. Now, if the science of mind hadn't advanced since the time when King Saul lost his kingly power to David, who did the divine will, it would make sense that Jesus be made king. Jesus was, for heaven's sakes, doing the divine will, preaching good news and feeding the hungry. But the understanding of divine mind had advanced. Christ showed the force of mind and its relationship to individual self-control, rather than human beings controlling one another. Christ preached the force of divine mind and its strength to manifest balance, health, and transformation. Christ employed the force of divine mind to advance our own spiritual consciousness, too often hidden under the clouds of human consciousness. Jesus was a scientist of divine mind. But my curiosity does get me to wondering, was Jesus the scientist, or are the people who write about Jesus the Christ scientists of the divine? Bible scholars agree that Jesus didn't write anything. The Gospels were written after Christ powerfully walked the earth, shined with a light of love, was crucified, resurrected, and ascended. These ideas are inspiring. Curiosity aside, rules and forces exist. Therefore, science advances. It must, not because science is the answer to everything, but because of discovery. If we couldn't discover something new every day, we wouldn't have science. Which brings me to something that happened many years ago. When studying the science of divine mind, I grew up hearing the words animal magnetism. I was taught that I must guard myself and others from animal magnetism. But it was a concept that seemed to fester paranoia or isolated fortitude. I could tell that the term generated divisiveness, mystery, and confusion. After years of this, I flat out did some research. Britannica explains that animal magnetism is defined as a presumed intangible or mysterious force that is said to influence human beings. It originated in the 19th century by physician Franz Mesmer to explain the hypothesis, the hypnosis treatments he gave patients. It's a force derived from the stars that affects human beings. The term is often used colloquially to mean sex appeal. Using that term in divine science wasn't helpful, and it didn't make me feel special or stronger because only me and a few others used the term and understood it. And it certainly didn't make me feel trustworthy to use the term animal magnetism in my head and not when speaking in the public about divine mind. So I asked myself, why am I using the words animal magnetism in a way that society is not? Why am I using those words at all? I've never met anyone else who uses the words animal magnetism in a general conversation. It would be like a handful of scientists of magnetism calling Earth's magnetic field a soccer field. Okay, a slight exaggeration, but you get the idea. Of course, I had no good answers to my questions other than it was churchy lingo in a church founded by Mary Baker Eddy in the 19th century. I hypothesized that animal magnetism was used to describe those times when our brain or fears or willfulness or wanting hero worship takes over our spiritual consciousness and makes us do stupid things. I thought, it's stupid to use words that had an exclusive, unwritten meaning. No longer using the words animal magnetism myself, or expecting others to read or listen to those words, I discovered words appropriate, such as hypnotism or mesmerism, hate, temptations, obsessions, near addictions to the flesh. All these words are being used by people from many faiths, backgrounds, and science fields, and naturally advancing the science of mind study. We learn to protect ourselves from and fight against negative attitudes. Things make more sense. I read in the Gospel where Jesus said, "Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." This willing spirit is sourced by an infinite force of divine mind, a power of love greater than the forces of magnetism, which change, greater than the force of gravity, because even on the moon, gravity may be weak, but divine mind has the same infinite strength as on earth. An infinite mind of love is unseen, but seen by its effects. That is why we witness people helping the poor. It's why we strive to clean water. It's why mothers help mothers and pets forgive our impatience. Love is why broken hearts are repaired. One other thing, magnetism implies attraction or repulsion, push and pull, two objects, either at odds or bound so tight that individuality is lost. Yes, we want to be good human beings, attracted to honesty, intelligence, and mercy, while repulsing egotism and vice and negative mindsets. But this is only the natural step to then acknowledging the force of infinite mind, where there is no push and pull, no separation between God and us, no loss of identity, no disalignment. Wait, is that a word? No unalignment. The force of mind is alignment of love, well-being, holy purpose, us. In divine science, the force of infinite mind is its unity with us as individual expressions of life, truth, and love in our own unique ways. We can become conscious right now, for an instant, for a moment, of the reality of this force of unity, the unity of divine will and me, you, God, no distracting obsessions, but a consciousness of pure and undefiled harmony and goodwill, constantly sourcing for discovery, creativity, health, and forgiveness by means of a powerful, infinite mind and its idea.